we are going to move to topic number 2. What it do? Okay, we're going to tell the truth because it went down last night. The Celtics escaped with a victory over the Pacers in a thriller in overtime. And the question is, did the Celtics put the aren't battle tested narrative to bed with the game 1 overtime win over the Pacers? And Zach, the mic is yours to kick us off.
Yeah, guys, I'll start off by saying this. I think that this was just such a typical Celtics playoff game. If you asked me to look up a Celtics playoff game in the dictionary from the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown era, I think this is a classic game that you would point to, because typically going into a game like this, you're thinking, oh, Boston, they wrapped up the Cavaliers in 5. They had the huge rest advantage considering they were off for a few days. We know Indiana just had to play at Madison Square Garden in a pivotal game number 7 against the Knicks. And Boston got off to such a good start. They're up 12-0. The fans are going crazy. You thought for a second that this game was going to be a blowout, but the Celtics really avoided disaster here in this game number 1. And I'm really not sure how this team that is just in the conference finals just about every year, you could pencil them in. They lose so many home playoff games. They have a lot of trouble winning on their home court in the playoffs. And I think you can make the case that Indiana probably deserved to win. Even though Boston kept on building these double-digit leads throughout the game, Indiana was fighting back. They were very resilient. But Boston, you felt like, had the lead. They were in control for the majority of the game. But then Indiana goes on that late push in the final few minutes, and Boston needed about 5 different things to go their way in the last few minutes in order to come away with the victory, and somehow they did. Indiana just flat out gave the game away. If you're the Pacers, I have no idea how you're not fouling up by 3 when that's already burned you in the playoffs a handful of times. You never forget game 3 against the Bucks. They had the lead. They had a 3-point lead 2 separate times at the end of regulation and at the end of overtime. They refused to foul, and Chris Middleton buried threes both times, and they were lucky enough to win. Halliburton bailed them out at the end of double overtime in that game 3, but I would have thought Rick Carlisle learned his lesson. Then even in game 3 against the Knicks, Andrew Nembhard just chucks up that miraculous shot to give the Pacers a 3-point lead with about 5 seconds to go, and Rick Carlisle still doesn't foul. And luckily it didn't bite him in that instance, but I was just saying, I was screaming at my TV with 5 seconds left, Boston inbounding the ball. You got to foul. You got to foul. And they didn't, and it cost them. And I think that this could be the game Indiana really needed, and it's going to cost them in this series. I thought that Drew Holiday was the best player on the floor for Boston. His defensive intensity was phenomenal. And I just think when you look back, Boston traded Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis. That was their first big move of the offseason. And when that trade was made, I was at least thinking to myself, like, how do they replace him? Do they have enough defensive intensity? And then they really caught a break that the Bucks traded Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard, and Boston ended up with him anyway. And Drew is a better version of Marcus Smart. And I think they really have to use that break they got to their advantage, and they have to win the championship this year. And in terms of the question, did the Celtics put the aren't battle test narrative to bed? I don't know if they've done that completely. I think they're going to have to win a bunch of games like that to fully rip off that narrative. But at the same time, too, I will say, I do wonder if a game like this is what they really needed. The first time in these playoffs where they were down, it looked like they were going to lose, and somehow, some way, they found a way to win. And one last point I'll make before I pass the mic. I think this game is also a clear example of why Jason Tatum is the most complicated superstar to judge in the NBA, because he was flat out bad late in the fourth quarter, but his teammates did enough to bail him out and send the game to overtime. And that's when he took over the game, and that's when he wouldn't let them lose. I thought it was very reminiscent of game number 6 against Philadelphia last year when Boston was facing elimination on the road. He stuck up the joint, but Philadelphia let Boston hang around just enough like Indiana did, and Tatum scored 16 points in the last 4 minutes to carry the team to victory. So I do think when you're Indiana, when you're such an underdog going into this series and you had the game right there, all you had to do was either not turn the ball over with 10 seconds left on that inbound pass or foul up 3, and you still find a way to lose. I just think that is an awful, awful loss, and it's going to cost them. Siakam should have fouled him right there. He had the opportunity. I think it's a brutal, brutal loss for the Pacers.
Yeah, I would like to jump in here real quickly, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Zay here. I would just like to say that it doesn't help when Rick Carlisle doesn't call a timeout to advance the ball. On the steal, I'm talking about with Jaylen Brown when he stole the ball from Siakam, forced it out of bounds. Actually, you gotta call a timeout there to advance the ball. Then obviously, I'm not sure. I believe they drew up to play the foul. That's what Rick Carlisle allegedly said at the presser, right? And it was gonna be a tough thing because he was trailing behind Jaylen Brown, so he could have got caught digging in the cookie jar right there, and that could have been a 4-point play if he wasn't really careful. So it's a tough spill right there. I'm not fouling Jaylen Brown as he knocked down that 3-point shot. But what I really want to talk about is Zach. You kind of open up, a lot of ideas for me because there's always going to be unsung heroes, in the playoffs from a team. It may not be your star players, right? For the Celtics last night, as an example, was Drew Holiday. He had 28 points. He was effective on both sides of the ball. He forced Tyrese Halliburton into an ill-advised turnover at the end of the game. And he was clearly the most valuable player on the floor last night, with all due respect. And we seen it with Anthony Edwards in game 7, right? He was 6 for 24, but you had the core guys stepping up, and he brought them home when it was all said and done. He scored 16 points at the end of the game when he had 6 points going into the fourth quarter. So I think when you're a star player, or you, in this case, have stars, right? You have to bring it home. Things are not always going to fall in line. You're going to be struggling. Jaylen Brown, I believe Jaylen Brown was 1 for 4 from deep. Tatum was 2 for 8 from deep. And we all know this is a 3-point shooting team, very 3-point centric. When the shot's not falling, that's when they get very erratic. And in the fourth quarter, they went 3 minutes without scoring the basketball. But at the end of the day, at the end of the game, they made the championship level plays to win the game. Jaylen Brown had a sequence where he had forced the turnover on Siakam. Then he hit the shot at the end of the game to extend the game into overtime. Then he had another steal with 30-something seconds left to go in the game. That's championship winning plays. Tatum, okay, was struggling. Then he scored 10 in overtime, right? Sort of like what we saw last year. You referenced it, Zach. Game 6 against the 76ers. All right, I'm 0 for 8 at halftime, but then I come out and I drop this amount of points, okay, in the second half of the game. You're always going to have an unsung hero. You cannot always depend on Tatum and Brown. I get it. They're the highest paid players in the room. They're your superstars, but you're not always going to have them going off consistently every night. You're going to have other guys step up, and Drew Holiday stepped up last night, and they brought him home. And I think for me, when you talk about the Celtics in particular and what's so hard about the Celtics and why I'm actually impressed, I do think they put that battle-tested narrative aside, not just by one game. Okay, we could talk about the history of the daggone Tatum and Brown era. All right, Brown has made 6 Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, they made the finals before. Okay, where they should have went up 3-1. Okay, you talking about battle tested? They was down 0-3 last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, came back to tie it up. Okay, they made the Eastern Conference Finals with 3 different head coaches back-to-back years with Joe Mazzulla. You're talking about adversity? I want to hear that garbage. Okay, maybe not this year in particular, but they got adversity that they can apply. They got experience, okay, from the past that they can apply, okay, in these, high profile moments. The Pacers don't got that. They don't got the experience Boston have. Boston got that on their side, okay? But I want to go back to this last point real quickly before I pass the mic, to Zay. Boston's situation is different. They got 1A, 1B, right? I compared Anthony Edwards, situation, him struggling and then bringing him home, but it's a different situation. He's the guy, the clear-cut guy. He's Anthony Edwards, okay? You had Kobe Bryant. He was a clear-cut guy. You had Michael Jordan. He was a clear-cut guy, right? Over here, you got Tatum and Brown, 1A, 1B. Okay, they got to decide, how they want to run their end game actions for Brown or for Tatum. They got to decide that. And I think last night showed that they need to split that evenly. All right, one of those plays for Tatum to win the game and bring us home. One of those plays for Jaylen Brown to bring us home. Okay, and listen, I was impressed. I don't know about y'all, but I think they played that narrative, away, and it should have never been really a narrative. But I get it.
As the plane flies by, um, did the Celtics put this air?
That's my Knicks going home, bro.
I think,
unfortunately,
I think it's tough because I think when we have an entirely different discussion if Tyrese Halliburton didn't turn the ball over with 17 seconds left in the game. I think the Celtics can't compete with the Pacers our style of offense. Their up and down style, it's very free. It's very free flowing. You don't know who the main guy is on the offense who's going to go to score. Miles Turner was having a lights out night. He couldn't miss from the 3-point line. Obi Toppin had 11 off the bench early. Neesmith was able to make threes. Nimhard was making pull-up jumper step backs. I don't know where he got that from his arsenal. He wasn't doing it all season. He's actually marked as a 29% shooter when he's shooting off the dribble. But in this playoffs, he's dismantling that notion completely. I think the Celtics they almost lost home court. Literally 17 seconds, and it was kind of wild. I don't think they've shown us anything yet. And I think it was a disappointing performance from Boston last night that they allowed the Pacers, who are coming off a Game 7, tired, beaten, battered against the New York Knicks, coming into Game 1 and allowing them to kind of run amok of what Boston was and what they pride themselves being. This is a team that's supposed to be ranked number 1 defense in the NBA, number 2 defense in the NBA, and they came in and looked horrible on an 8-day rest, mind you. These guys are well rested. There should be no reason why they look lethargic going up against the Indiana Pacers on defense. So I think last night, I think they actually showed me what I felt like all along. The Boston Celtics have no heart. They play with no heart. They have all this talent on their roster, top to bottom, but for whatever reason, they play with zero heart and zero energy against teams they should be beating up. Now, that's something I've been saying all season, and it goes again now against the Indiana Pacers. I think the Pacers are actually motivated going into the next game to make something happen because the Boston Celtics aren't playing to the level that everyone makes them to believe. We're talking about NBA Finals. That didn't look like an NBA Finals team to me last night. That didn't look like a team that should even be in the NBA Finals last night. So I think the Pacers still have an opportunity to create an upset to win Game 2 to take away home court from the Boston Celtics. But I think the Celtics need to turn up a notch. They have to play with more urgency. This can't be, we have the better talent, we're going to win the game. Like, we're going to win the series. This has to be, we're hungry, we have something to prove. Let's go out there and win it. It's similar to what the energy I'm looking for is similar to when the Spurs lost to Miami and then they came back the next year. They had a chip on their shoulder. They were dismantling teams left and right that entire playoff series, going into the finals to win the finals in that 4-1 against Miami Heat, the second go around. I think that's something that the Boston Celtics need to channel. They have to channel that energy, that urgency to go out there and win, because it didn't look like that last night at all. Down the stretch, they were missing left and right, and it took an inexperienced, as Lil said, an inexperienced Indiana Pacers team that caused, I believe, 2 to 3 turnovers in the span of 17 seconds. So that's something that clearly needs to be addressed going into Game 2, and I'm hoping it does become addressed so we can see that battle-tested narrative put to rest.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I think for me, is a difference between battle-tested and mental toughness. To say that the Celtics haven't been battle-tested in the Brown, Jason Tatum era is just stupid, right? Maybe we talking about this year, and in that scenario, I could understand it. But I think playing in today's NBA, the 82 games, it's a test in itself. I'm playing that amount of games, the injuries, the wear and tear, everybody's playing hurt. It's a test. Maybe not the opponents, right? But it's still a test. But to say they haven't been battle tested, I think is a little bit spotty. I think mental toughness is what we need to question and what Zay is questioning. And I don't think Zay realized that's where he's actually going, is mental toughness, right? Because you can have adversity. We all go through it. But do you learn from it? Or you mature enough? Do you have the mental toughness to overcome that? And I think they showed some of that last night, and because they should have lost that game. Yes, obviously the Pacers helped them, with ill-advised turnovers at the end of that game, but they still had to take it. They still had to knock down the shots in order for them to win the game, and I think they did so. And I think for me, everybody talk about they don't win close games. They won a close game. That was a narrative with the Celtics. In the past, they don't win close games. The only time they win is a blowout when things are going right. Well, things wasn't going right last night to me. They should have lost that game, and they won the game. So I think when you look at Game 4, they're going to get Kristaps back, and I think that's going to make things harder for the Pacers, because we all know he can stretch the floor. His pick and roll defense. That's what Boston missed last night. Al Horford was getting targeted. Okay. He was getting targeted in the last series on the pick and roll. Right. They was targeting him last night on the perimeter using their speed against him. This is not the same Big Al of a couple years ago in the finals where he was shooting 48%. Okay. That's not that Al. This is a guy that needs to be playing less minutes. Okay, and right now he's playing a lot of minutes because Kristaps is out. So I think Boston is only going to get stronger at game 4, and I think Boston will win this series in 5 or 6 games. I'm going to give the Pacers probably a game or two based off of what I saw in some ways last night. They really played the game they wanted to play, and they both play fast, but obviously the Pacers play faster. They want to be in the track meet. So this series is going to be indicative of playing the Pacers game. I got to give them a game or two, but I still like the Celtics to really overcome that. And once more, I don't really believe in this battle tested narrative. They are battle tested, but do they have mental toughness? That's a difference.
Yeah, Zay, I think a lot of what you said is fair, but I do think that Boston, I think that game last night and how they won it could be something they really benefit from and use as momentum, because they were looking dead and they found a way to win. And sometimes that's all it takes. And honestly, like, I think the Celtics might sweep the series. I actually think there's a good chance that they do, especially with Porzingis coming back. If you're Indiana and you're in that spot as an underdog, you played pretty well last night. You were super resilient, found a way to punch back. That was a spot on paper where you should have gotten blown out, considering Boston had the clear rest advantage and you still couldn't get it done. That's just a gut punch loss. Porzingis coming back isn't going to help. I thought that's where Indiana benefited from last night, was Siakam just, really eating down low. Al Horford played 39 minutes. That's not something that's going to be sustainable for Boston. So I do think, if you want to point at one thing, they do really need Porzingis back. But I think Indiana blew their chance last night. And even shout out to Joe Mazzulla. I never thought I'd say that, but he made sure Indiana would not come back to tie that game late, fouling Indiana, playing the math game up 6 in the final few minutes of overtime, which was something Indiana just refused to do. So I think the Pacers blew their opportunity last night. I do think this Celtic team is pretty battle tested. I thought Will brought up a good point. This team has so much playoff experience. They've had so many heartbreaking playoff losses. Eventually, you have to be able to learn from those.
Exactly, Zach. It's like this narrative, they aren't battle tested, bro. Do you know they previous years, bro? You don't need a test right now. Your test is getting over that hump. There should be no reason why you don't win the daggone championship.
Right. And also, let me say this too. I don't even blame them for, nonchalanting their first 2 series. Like, they were never going to lose to Miami without Jimmy Butler. They were never going to lose to Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell. They treated those games like exhibition games, rightfully so. And maybe even they treated last night like an exhibition game. They certainly played like it, but I think that almost losing could be the wake-up call they really need to say, you know what? Yeah, this is actually the playoffs, and you're only 7 wins away from an NBA Finals. I think last night could be the kick in the butt they needed.
Well, this is why I feel like last night was it's not going to continue happening this entire series. There was a 30-10 free throw disparity in this game. 20 free throws. That's not going to happen again. I don't see the Boston Celtics shooting 20 more free throws for the rest of the series over the Indiana Pacers. Also, Drew Holiday had 28 points. That's the most he had in his entire playoff stint this season. Also 4 for 8 from threes. He's not going to do that again moving forward. That's not. That's not his game.
To. With
It's
all
a
the
lot of different
stars
things.
on the
Also,
roster.
talking about when they didn't play well? Tatum had 36. Jaylen Brown had 26, over 50% from the field. They played exceptional. They played really well. They played really good. The only thing was the Pacers gave up the ball at the end of the game. So the Celtics, they played well. It wasn't like they were shooting terrible. It wasn't like they were missing threes. They was missing open shots. It was none of that whatsoever. It was just that the Pacers turned the ball over twice within the 20 seconds of the game.
Yo, Zay, quick question. Didn't the Pacers shoot like over 50% from the field?
Yeah. They shot 54.
Exactly. I mean, I understand they did it. They did way better than that against my Knicks, right? Shooting like almost 70%. But how sustainable is this going to be? Like, that's not going to be sustainable. Yes, 2 straight games. Okay, lights out shooting percentage. Okay. But at the end of the day, bro, you can look at these games and things are going to change. Drew Holiday, of course, he's not going to score 28 every single night. It's not going to happen. But he's not going to have to. Okay. His role is a little bit shiftier here on the Celtics. Most of the time, he's there to really defend and get and facilitate. Right, not really to score. He had to score last night. Why? Because I don't believe in that false narrative that you push out there. I don't think Tatum had a great game. He probably had a good game when you consider at the end of the game in overtime he went off. He had a good game. Jaylen Brown had a borderline good to great game, but at the same time, Drew Holiday needed to score 28 because his guys wasn't doing that job. They were struggling, right? but he's not going to have to do that more often. When you get Kristaps Porzingis back, that's going to be a guy that's going to open up the driving lanes and make things easier for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? So at the end of the day, things are going to shift. It's a 7-game series. Adjustments are going to be made, but when it's all said and done, I think the Celtics are going to move on, and they probably going to win this in 5.
The earliest that Kristaps Porzingis is saying to come back is Game 4, so he's not going to be back for the next 2 games. So if you're saying this is the level of play that the Celtics are going to be, I don't think this is sustainable to keep the Pacers off the court, because the Pacers literally play fast break basketball up and down. Al Horford cannot sustain that kind of game for another 40 minutes the next couple games. It's not possible. And I'm talking about Al Horford itself, because the next center besides that is Luke Cornett. If you're thinking Luke Cornett's going to beat the Indiana Pacers, then we're talking about an entirely different game. This Indiana Pacers team is not just some fluky team that somehow stumbled upon the playoffs. There's a team that was the number 1 in offense this year. There's a team that literally went 3-2 in the season series against the Boston Celtics in in an entire season. So there's not some bum team. There's a team that literally has shooters all around that move up and down, and the Celtics have to figure a way to win this game, because right now, last night, the Celtics have shown a chink in their armor that everyone appears to be as a favorite to win the NBA Finals.
You know really how we should word this question? Did the Pacers put the battle-tested narrative to bed? Because they lucked out from injuries too. Everybody want to talk about Boston. We through the playoffs. What happened to Giannis in round 1? Hurt, didn't play. Okay. What happened last series against my Knicks? That went to Game 7. We ran out of gas. We was injured. Okay. So the Pacers haven't fought through adversity much either. Maybe a little bit more than Boston, if you want to say that.
Yeah, but Indiana was never a defensive team. We all said that. They said they don't play defense. They're gonna just run up and down the court all game. And if they're gonna
they've been doing it. They've been beating opponents that way. Yeah,
and they almost beat the Celtics last night on that. And the only issue was that they got 2 turnovers in 17 seconds. It wasn't like the Celtics outplayed them. The Celtics got blessed with 2 turnovers at the end of the game.
Some of it was ill-advised, and some of it was good defensive plays, bro. They actually played defense towards the end. They locked up, the Celtics did, when they needed to.
Was lost. That still would have came down to them losing the game. I'm just saying, the Celtics, if we're talking about this team that was supposed to be superior to the entire Eastern Conference, they didn't show us that last night. No matter how much rest, they didn't show us this team that's so much better than everyone else in the East.
And Zay, I think that's fair. But do you expect that to continue the rest of the series? What's your expectation for the rest of the series?
Like I said, but Boston Celtics, they're like similar to the 49ers. They're so much better than everyone else, but they always come short at the end at the finish line. They never cross the finish line. The Celtics were so much better than Miami, and they lost. And despite Jason Tatum getting hurt, and it's Game 7, they still had way more than the Miami Heat to win and go to the NBA Finals. It's just that Boston Celtics finds ways to lose the game. That's just who they are. That's who they've been the last 10 years. They always find a way to lose, and that's why I don't. It's a funny situation. Another team they should beat, they should sweep, they should take them out of there. But I just have an eerie feeling we're gonna see another failure from the Boston Celtics. I just don't know why, but it just seems like it's gonna be another thing that Boston Celtics cannot get over the hump because of whatever it is. We blame the coaching, we blame Tatum, we blame Brown, we blame Marcus Smart at one point. But at the end of the day, it's just the Celtics organization, for whatever reason, finds ways to not win an NBA Finals, even though they are the favorites to do so.
My last thought, I'll just say this. They better do it this year, because, Zay, I've shared a lot of your opinions that you just said, especially going into this season. But I will say, I think that Drew Holiday trade won them the game last night. I don't think they win that game without him and that trade getting done. I think Porzingis coming back could be a huge difference in the finals. And they also, you could even make the argument, caught a little bit of a break that Denver got knocked out, because Will and I had this conversation last week when you were gone. If Boston and Denver were to play in the NBA Finals, who would you give the edge? A lot of people were saying Denver as the defending champs. So now that Denver's knocked out, they're getting Porzingis back. The Holiday trade was an impact one. This has to be their year. And if they don't win it this year, Zay, I'll fully be on your ship and say they'll never get it done, because there's no time like the present, and they got to get it done.
Folks, let us know how y'all feeling. Are y'all more confident? Because right now it seems to be a shift here on the show. It seems to be a split, right? Me and Zach, our big takeaways pretty much is that this is a wake-up call for Boston, in which they will build upon this and be like, all right, we can't play around with this team. We are going to take care of business as we should. But Zay feels that it's the same old Boston Celtics, and last night is not anything positive, not really mainly positive to take away. So let us know how y'all feeling after this game. Should we be more positive about the Celtics or more positive about the Pacers and more negative about the Celtics? Let us know in the comments. We are going to go to halftime here, and when we come back, we are going to move into the NFL before we come right back to the NBA. Make sure you keep it locked.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.